Hey, this is Eva for Once Upon a Timeline. Welcome, everybody. I see some of you guys are in already. Let's see. Miss Imaginary. That's a good one. It's Me, Sia, Data Junkie, Tronite, Killcook Monty, Zetel 9016, Lori Sorensen, Janice Windsor, Silver E55. I'm pretty sure I saw that for a second. And an Angel. Okay, looks like that's, Unimatrix 001 and Bit of Venom are all in. So you guys were talking about something in here. Um, oh yeah, that, the, Lord's Prayer. I think I've covered that one before, that there was a third one. For me, originally it was, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive others, or something like that. And then it became debts and debtors, and that was the big Emmy. And this was an interesting one because at first it was trespasses in some aspects of some versions of the Bible, and it was debtors in other versions. And there was a big fight over whether people were just confused about the versions and weren't familiar with all the versions, and that it wasn't really an ME. And then a little time went by, and then suddenly all the Bible versions said trespasses, said debtors, and none of them said trespasses. So trespasses was thrown out. And then all those threads disappeared where people were arguing whether it was a confusion of versions, because now it's all the same versions. Last I did check, not super long ago, I'm trying to remember if I talked about it on here. I may not have. I did see the sin thing about a month or two ago. See if I can find all the versions. Weirdly, it was such a big thing when it came out, but by the time it switched over to sins, it was like hardly anybody even remembered it. Okay, I've clicked on this one before because it's highlighted. So 3 ways we say the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. That's the second version for me. All right. Forgive us our trespasses. That's the original one. So now they're saying it came from some other, let's see. Somebody named Tyndall preferred trespasses. Yeah, that's what I had heard like long, long, long ago. Some really old versions used trespasses, was the last I checked. But none of the current translations use trespasses. But it was in like this book of hymns or something. There was like this other book that wasn't the Bible that it was still in. He published his English Testament in 1526 against the will of law of Henry the Eighth, and then lived in mortal danger only 10 more years till he was betrayed by his friend for his translation crimes. Okay, I hadn't heard about all that. He didn't live long enough to make many revisions, and his preference didn't leave its mark long in the legacy of translation. By 1611, the translators of the King James Version went back to using debts. Trespasses first appeared in, the Book of Common Prayer was the last, as of the 1979 edition, it was still being used. So yeah, that's after it disappeared out of all of the current translations. It was only in the Book of Prayer. Catholic churches also adopted it, and they still use it, even though when praying in Latin, the Pater Noster, our Father, uses debtor language. Okay, so weird. One guy in one translation in 1526 used trespassers, and it's taken over that much since then. Seems unlikely. All right, let's see where the sins one came. All right, sins. All right, I'm trying to find where it says sins in here. Find in this page, sin. In Luke's version of the prayer, Jesus says, "Forgive us our sins, for we ourselves forgive everyone who is indebted to us." Okay, yeah, this one just showed up a few months ago, as far as I can tell. It's not really old. In this case, the Greek word used for sins is blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, when I first looked into this, I checked, and it was definitely debtors for all versions of the Bible. So apparently, Luke's version now we have sins. So that's new. I don't know. Is sins going to take over the way trespasses did? I mean, the way debtors did? I don't know. Anyways, just weird. I don't know. I thought I covered that on here. I'm just not sure if I really did or if I only talked about it on Redcon now. But yeah, it's not super new to me. It's at least a few months old, which is still fairly new. It's just weird, there were so many people freaking out about the debtors and trespasses thing. And then later, most of those people were gone. I mean, I brought it up and hardly any remembered it. It was just, I don't know if they're in a different timeline or what. I'm wondering if how many of you know whether Skippy was before Jif, which I remember as Jiffy. I thought Skippy was a knockoff, but it says it's not. I remember them being two different brands, really popular. I mean, I don't know. Peanut butter is an old thing, so I don't know if you can have a knockoff of Jif when peanut butter probably predated Jif. So anyway, I've never heard of it being a knockoff. All right, now they're talking about which one, Jiffy or which one came first. I don't know. Beta Vemna remembers sins originally. Trespasses or debtors RMEs. That's interesting. All right, so then this version of Bit of Venom is from the sins timeline. Because there definitely was no sins. I actually really researched this one when the big argument was going on about the debts versus trespassers. And then I researched it again when it turned all to debtors. And there was definitely no sins. Nikki Lauda or Nikki Lauda. I don't know that person. All right. So, back to the scheduled programming. All right, so what was on the front thumbnail was a hairy frogfish. This is from Sean Allen, a commenter on the channel. Good find. I've covered frogfish before, but they've really mutated quite a bit. There was just the regular one with a kind of the feet-like front fins, but now they've got hairy frogfish. This one actually bites fish so fast that it's beyond perception. Fish are a lot faster in this timeline. I'm going to show a little clip here. He's going to suck this guy in so quick you can't even process it with your brain cells. All right. There's also some other kinds of hairy frogfish. These guys, I am not exactly sure. I know this one is one because you can see the mouth and the eyes. I'm not sure if this one is one or not. I found a view of it from the other side, and this one looks really flat. So it looks more like an actual coral. But, yeah, stay tuned on that one. It's hard to tell. All right, there are a lot of kinds of frogfish now. Super tiny ones. This is a painted frogfish here. See, it has the little feet. these feet getting more and more feet-like. They were more fin-like originally, but they're getting very feet-like now. Warty frogfish, the weird colors and stuff. I haven't seen any of these yet. I haven't really looked at frogfish that much. Originally, when frogfish came out, they didn't have that gaping maw so much either. There's a lot of kinds. This thing, what is this thing? Eastern frogfish. All right, that one has more fin-like fins. A lot of these frogfish are getting really fat stomachs now, too. They're just looking less like fish. This is not one of the fat stomach ones, but see, they're getting like this giant stomachs. Like, you can't even imagine them swimming hardly. The fins are turned around. They look more like feet with toes here. This guy's got weird appendages on his head. Have not seen that one before today. Here's another interesting one. This guy almost looks like his back fins are turning into feet also. Should be interesting to keep an eye on that one. All kinds of interesting appendages on their heads. You notice you see one that you think it's the same one, and then the appendages, there's humongous variation in the appendages even among the same species. Also, like the hairy frogfish, they said there's ones with short hair and with long hair. So, a lot of variation. See, this one looks like it's got a little tail along with its little feet. I mean, that really does look like a Pokemon. Painted frogfish. Again, looks like feet back there growing. Look at the fatness of him. Really fat. It's like little puppies, undersea puppies or something. Another weird, I think he's got his mouth open. Weird looking things. Just a lot of really weird. All right, so anyway, that's those. I think this is supposed to be one also. Somewhere in that mess is a frogfish. Different colored ones. They didn't have all this stuff on their head before either. This one's an interesting one. I can't find any other photos besides this one. And if you click on it, it doesn't give you any info about that. Lately, I've been seeing these super tiny ones also. Anyway, so they've been busy. The frogfish have been busy, is all I have to say. All right, so South America is crazy close to Africa. The Christopher Columbus story makes no sense. Yeah, you know, it's definitely shifted more east. I think it's tilted a little too. Let's see if I can find a decent image on here. A lot of them to me look like this part is kind of tilted more than that part. Because I remember when I was first watching this, first of all, there was a lot of talk of it saying that like South America was only half under North America, and now it's barely under it at all. I mean, it's only almost completely to the east. The other thing is I remember the tilt fitting better into here than it does now. It looked like it could just slide right in. but now this end is way to the side. So I think it's like this part has moved to the east and this part hasn't as much. So I guess that means that this part's got to stretch out over here, which it does look interestingly longer than I remember up in here. So that will probably help with the closing off here of these waterways. I got some other stuff I'm going to cover later, but yeah, stuff's always changing on the map. And this, I think all of the continents are going to continue to shift. You know, I can only guess they're coming into one mass. It seems like they're all on the same side of the planet now. They didn't used to be like that. And the planet's gotten a lot smaller, so, I mean, they're really working at squeezing them all onto one side. So I also wanted to say that, you know, when I was growing up, there was no concept called Pangea. And then maybe 10 years ago, it was just some kind of like a, wouldn't it be interesting if kind of a thing. There wasn't really any evidence for it. And then it was just one of many theories, and now it's kind of the accepted theory. So it just seems like we're really moving towards that whole one continent kind of deal. And apparently it says stuff like that in the Bible too, which is also interesting. I had that exact thought. Africa is higher. Look at the tip next to the tip of South America. Ah, okay. Higher. That's a good point. Let me go back. My voice is a little scratchy today. I don't know why, so I apologize. I don't know if it's shifting again. I'm going to get a deeper voice again. Because there's no real reason for it. I'm not real tired or anything. Back to where it was. Let's look at this one this time. You know, it kind of makes sense. It's swinging around and up. So either if it's going to swing straight east, then this has to get longer and longer, but maybe it's swooping up a little bit. Still, I'm wondering, maybe Africa will squeeze over a little bit and tip to fit in there. Should be interesting. Okay, so this is I probably should have put this one first because this is the one that caught my eye. On Reddit, front page, on EF3 fire tornado. So I've discussed how tornadoes can form in large fires now. Well, this is basically a tornado caused by a fire, and it made it EF3 status. So that's like a really big tornado. It's very serious. And there's a little bit of a clip of them. Now, apparently this sucker was supposed to be filmed in California in the recent Northern California fires. Didn't hear a peep about that after the actual fires, so it's interesting to see it showing up now. So you can see it swirling. So that's supposed to be an EF3. Now, they had, I think a few years ago, I don't know if it's still true, but a few years ago they announced that they changed the systems for naming tornadoes. So a Cat 3 is now an EF3, and supposedly they're similar. The reasoning behind it was really weird. I couldn't even remember it, but it's suspicious. So anyway, they also changed the way of naming earthquakes recently. Everything's changed. The reasons are not always that great. All right, so I looked into this, and I'm like, I'm just kind of checking it out, and I ran into this. Okay, so cumulonimbus flammagenitus are another kind of cloud. I've discussed in the past all the new clouds, but I did not have this one covered. Cumulonimbus flammagenitus, otherwise known as pyrocumulonimbus cloud. Basically, it's a cloud that's created after a big fire, but not just any old cloud. So this cloud is created by the fire. It comes up here, it cools, and it becomes a thunderstorm. And the thunderstorm then can have rain, lightning, and downbursts. Now, I was not able to find too much info on this downbursts thing. I think it's still developing. This is pretty much, this image is the most I was able to find. But they said that it causes high winds. Now, what I remember when I first heard of fires causing their own winds was that it would blow, it would suck in oxygen so fast that it would create a wind laterally, and then it would blow along with the wind. But now they're talking about this updraft thing here. So it's sucking the wind in, which is a totally different direction. The downburst wind then blasts down this way, and they're showing trees being thrown down here. So that's a hell of a wind if they're showing broken up trees. Supposedly, sometimes the rain can even put out the fire. So the fire can put itself out, believe it or not. Never heard of such a thing. The lightning thing is the most recent thing I had found. I think I've discussed that one. But this whole rain thing is it's the first time I've heard of this rain downburst thing. So very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so we already covered that one. So I kind of looked it up here. They're comparing the reduced ground level sunlight from these things to a nuclear winter effect. Spokes from CBFG clouds can persist for weeks, and within that, reduced ground level sunlight as the nuclear winter. Supposedly discovered in 1998. Extreme manifestations caused direct injection of a large abundance of smoke from a firestorm. I don't know. I've heard about these clouds persisting for weeks. They have a lot of names for something that was just discovered in 98. Pyrocumulonimbus, PyroCB, blah, blah, blah. Here's one other thing I wanted to bring up, which I think is really interesting. I don't know how many of you watched Mandela Effects' old videos, and indeed a lot of them have changed drastically for me, so I don't know if it happened in this timeline. But there was a video where he talked about how and he was identified in March 2016 as a pyrocumulonimbus cloud that engulfed the city, a fire that reached its peak intensity some 3 hours after the bomb. So are you trying to tell me that all the way up until 2016, they misidentified the Hiroshima bomb mushroom cloud, and that it was actually just a pyrocumulonimbus cloud that happened, 3 hours later? All right, whatever. It doesn't look anything like the cloud I used to see. It's not mushroom shaped. They're calling it a mushroom cloud, but that does not look like a mushroom. Of course, the new mushrooms are really weird, but whatever. I don't know. The whole thing is just so ridiculous that at some point I just don't even want to talk about it anymore. But anyways, I got some other stuff, but that's all I've got already pulled out onto website pages here. Let's see what you guys are up to. Sean Allen's awake for the live stream. Welcome. Also, as of Friday, there's a fault line on the Atlantic coast. There wasn't one further east than the New Madrid. That's Data Junkie. That's another one I've covered before. There was apparently a bunch of earthquakes and all kinds of crap, Illinois and down along that line. That one I covered a few months ago. California was always the big earthquakes place, and Japan, but they're just not anymore. That's all I have to say. Why is I always in capitals now? Every sentence correct me when I type. I was always in capitals for me. I noticed the younger kids weren't capitalizing it, but for my old people timeline, it was always capitalized. I've never seen such a photo. Yeah, I know. I don't recognize that fake Hiroshima cumulonimbus, whatever the heck cloud that it doesn't look like anything. The original Hiroshima bomb was mushroom shaped for me. That does just looks like I don't know, a piece of foam. So I cry uncle on that one. So apparently this 2003 Canberra fire also, it's interesting because for a long, long time, people would call a nasty fire a firestorm, but there was no actual storm, but it was like the name came first, and now there really is a storm from the fire. So now they can say there's a firestorm. They're not joking. There's a storm with clouds, rain, lightning, and winds, and the whole 9 yards. So again, very interesting. How I mean, I guess you could say that maybe the name came first and then the Emmy changed it to match the name, but I find it hard to believe that this wasn't like an example of really early planning, that this was going to go this route. All right, so apparently Canberra firestorm also made an EF3 on the Fujita scale, which is the new scale for tornadoes. The first confirmed violent fire tornado. The first confirmed violent fire tornado, not the first confirmed fire tornado. All right, C. The Illinois is west of New Madrid. The Atlantic Fault runs from Charlotte, South Carolina to Pennsylvania. Just check that out. Atlantic. Something like that. Ramapo faults. No, is that it? Where are the fault lines in eastern United States? There was like no significant fault lines in eastern United States originally for me. The answer is partly, why are most faults in the eastern U.S. buried? Yeah, okay. That's why you never knew about them, because they were buried. Yeah, right. Few of these faults have evidence of being active in Quaternary time. All right, there's no map. Gosh. All right, yeah, that's legit. That's what it looks like. Not seeing a lot of really useful info on that. Right, it might be Ramapo fault is what we're looking at. Let's see. Never heard that word before. Northern Appalachian and Piedmont areas spanning 185 miles in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Best known fault zone in mid-Atlantic region. Okay, so here's the shift. Now, for my old timeline, you could not have big earthquakes because you did not have big fault lines. Some seismologists have argued that this fault has the potential to produce a major earthquake. All right, so this one's a little shifty right now. I think you're just going to have to keep an eye on this one. But it just seems like it's shifting towards a little more earthquakes, a little more earthquakes. I don't remember like hurricanes reaching up into New York and stuff either. They would just make it to Florida. But apparently now, during 9/11, there was a hurricane off the coast. of New York on the day of 9/11. So weird. Basically, you're it's just like the fault lines are growing like little spider webs. Okay, so got that one. Oh, this was a funny one. Australia. Good old Australia. Keeps changing. All right, now, I always thought that Tasmania was on the mainland. I remember there being a region of Australia called Tasmania. Let's see. Let me just see if that's even still on there. I mean, Australia map. I remember there being a section in Australia that was called Tasmania. I'm not sure if it's still there now. Actually, I haven't. I should have looked at it earlier, but Tasmania. Remember, there's more. I remember more sections in Australia too. Dang it, I can't read that. Let's see if this one's better. Victoria, South Australia, North, West, Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria. I remember there being a big chunk of this called Tasmania. And then there was, and I think it was somewhere around here, and then there was this little Tasmania island. But this island, when I first saw it maybe 5 years ago, it was a tiny little thing, and it has been growing and growing and growing. Oh, that doesn't help much. So Tasmania is a ton bigger. It used to be just a little podunk thing. I mean, just tiny. Of course, many of us don't remember this big bay up here and these points. Frankly, if you turned Australia upside down and got rid of these points, that looks more like how I remember the shape, too. The shape just keeps morphing. So, interestingly, I ran into this. Tasmania, the part of Australia everyone forgets. So you can see that it's cut off on this map, that Tasmania is down there. No one can seem to remember it is there. A politician even had to issue a press release to help Australians remember the forgotten state. And the State Tourism Organization ran a campaign drilled home the fact Tasmania is a world apart, not a world away. All right, so apparently Tasmania gets left off a lot of maps. Now, weirdly, I kept hearing that complaint about New Zealand being left off a lot of maps, too. So apparently both Tasmania and New Zealand suffer from the map disease. But interestingly enough, after I ran into that, I ran into this, which is totally weird. Never heard of such a thing as this. I was just laughing. All right, see if it'll load here. Come on, dude. New plan to keep Tasmania from drifting. In 40 years, Tasmania will drift out of Australian waters. Since when are plate tectonics supposed to move that fast? So supposedly, in 2031, Tasmania will have moved from this location to all the way out here and outside of Australian waters. Tasmania is drifting at an alarming rate. In 20 years, Tasmania will be double the distance it is now from the mainland, and in 40 years, it'll be out to sea. The research comes after the residents of Devonport reported that the mainland seemed a bit further away than usual. This observation was proved to be true after further investigation. The drifting is said to be in part due to Tasmania's placement on the Australasian tectonic plate and the constant shifting of sea levels. I'm not sure how the sea levels play into the shifting of the sea levels. Isn't the sea level always the same? The shifting of the sea levels. I don't think I even understand that. Sea level is sea level, and I guess other than tides. And how does that push Tasmania out to sea? I don't quite get it. Davidson believes the shift is a result of climate change and how that prompted the rearranging of the plates. How does climate change rearrange the plates now? I mean, I don't know. I thought the plates were floating on somewhat kind of liquidy. Well, it used to be liquid magma, but now they're saying it's solid mantle that acts like liquid. If they float on that, then how does climate change push around the plates? I don't know. This whole thing sounds just crazy. Drifting of this speed hasn't been seen since the formation of Australia. It's worrying. If the drifting continues as far as we expect it to, there could be an issue of ownership between Australia and New Zealand. But Davidson and the Cabinet of Tasmanian and Australian waters are devising a plan to permanently attach Tasmania to mainland Australia. We've looked into giant magnets implanted into the lower rock surface of the island. There's also been suggestions of giant interlocking chain systems, but by far the most popular suggestion is underwater bridging. This all sounds like total baloney cockamamie to me. It's on the nationalgeographic.com, so I mean it's a somewhat trusted source, one would imagine. By bridging the two continents deep under the surface on the lower ocean floor, it's guaranteed the roots of the island will stay intact with the mainland. We want to avoid as much international tension as possible. Australia and New Zealand have a very special relationship, and we like to keep it that way. This whole article, I guess I better check it's not like April Fool's or something. Oh, it is April Fool's. Oh, my God. All right, I got totally snowed on that one. Oh, okay. Weird. Now I feel stupid, so I apologize. I actually just thought of that all of a sudden. Okay, so that was the April Fool's because it read like one. But I still want to say this, though. There's something funny going on with Tasmania growing. So I don't know if this is like hiding it by making a joke out of it or what. But could people in Tasmania really see that they're drifting out? That is a serious question that has to be asked. And I don't know if this is making fun of it or it's predicting it or what. But I got snowed on that one. Luckily, I noticed it before you guys did. It would have been really bad. All right. Anyways. So there's still the thing where everybody forgets Tasmania. I don't know what's up with that one either. Because there's not really any reason to it. And I mean, you have the Tasmanian devil and everything too, so. All right, frogfish, I got that one. All right, this is another one. Sorry about that. I guess I should have checked for that April Fool's one. I even read a bunch of the comments and they didn't cover it right away. I think that's one of the dangers of the ME is that no matter how ridiculous something is, you're sort of like, oh, I guess it's just the timeline. I mean, in the old days, I would have immediately went, no way. All right, this one I just noticed. There is a Dick's Sporting Goods near me. I drove by it. The Dick's Sporting Goods near me has only been there for a few years. So I was pretty surprised to see, let's see if I can make this large, this on the sign. this thing. In fact, I didn't even know what it was when I drove by. I thought it was some kind of a snow cone or something. So I guess it's a bunch of balls, but that wasn't on there when they built it, and it wasn't on there 6 months ago. And this Dick's is right next to a Target, which also has the funky logo now, without the normal amount of rings. So they're saying that this has been the logo since 2004, which I really do not believe is likely. Because the building has built after 2004. So if this was their logo since 2004, they would have put that on there to start with. They wouldn't just be putting it on there. I also don't ever remember this logo, which was the pre-2004 one. I've never seen that one before. I've only seen this green one, but not with the balls, the bouncy balls for the comma. So I'm calling Emmy on that one. That one is for sure an Emmy. And not an April Fool's. All right. Okay, this one, it may be I was just living under a rock. It could be I didn't hear about it. I'm just going to mention it. It could be just me. But apparently IHOP joked about changing its name last year to IHOB, IHOB. And they joked that it was going to be International House of Burgers. And then later they backtracked on it and said, no, we're just joking. We're not changing it to IHOB. We're just advertising our burger thing for a while. Let's see if I can go back. I saw a lot of articles saying unless you were living under a rock, you would know about this. Now there's other IHOP. There's been some other IHOP changes earlier that people have mentioned, and that is these funky smiles that are under the IHOP. Gosh, I don't remember any of these. All right, I don't remember ever seeing this one to 2003 with the bendy restaurant sign under it. I don't remember this one to 2015. This one showed up maybe like a year ago with the smiley and the lower cases. I do remember it being blue, but not this pattern. A lot of people, this pattern is an ME. I kind of remember it more like the IHOP with the restaurant under it, but not bent like that. I do not remember ever it being bent like that. Looks like a frowny face too. It's weird. If it had just been straight across and different style of lettering, I think that could be right. Okay, so apparently, let's see what it's saying here. The O and the P are the eyes, while the P serves as the nose. The word restaurant was dropped from the logo. On June 3rd, IHOP will have another publicity name change. They're keeping the P, but it will be for something else, and it was pancakes, but okay, I don't know. I don't even understand this sentence. But anyway, so they're covering the IHOB here, but this paragraph does not seem to make sense with it. So apparently they're talking now about changing. IHOP is going to now change the P to mean something else. I don't know. There's something weird going on. I don't remember that ever being IHOB, basically. So that's my main complaint. Maybe I was living under a rock. It could be something I wouldn't. It could be something I'd missed, so I can't really say, but I'm just curious if anybody else remembers that. So apparently they made out like it was going to be changed. You know, the whole thing is, I've heard like 10 different versions of it everywhere I look. I don't know if it was like, it seems like mass confusion. So apparently they announced it was going to be IHOB, and then they backtracked. Did they get bad publicity and then say, haha, just kidding? I don't know. What do you think about resets, like something major happening and us starting over and losing history? I always hear everything that's been here has before. I really don't know. I really, there's just, did we, I wonder if maybe it's like the path is going to a bad place, so we go back and we restart uh, before we get to the bad place. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if it's something like that. Africa splitting in two as well. Um, I do remember they're saying an island was called Sandy Island. That sounds familiar. Is there another one? Last I checked, there was only Tasmania as an island. No, not last I checked. I checked like 2 years ago, and there was only Tasmania, and it was small. And there's a lot of islands now off the coast of Australia. I guess we all remember Tasmania because of the Tasmanian devil. Yeah, but it was a section of Australia. It was Tasmania. It wasn't an island. When I was a kid, Tasmania was a fictional place. It only existed since the ME for me. I would not be surprised. Yeah, I remember it as this, I did my country report in sixth grade on Australia. I had to cover all the sections. Tasmania was a section of Australia. There were more sections back then, and Tasmania was one of those sections. I had to draw out all the sections and freehand it because that was before it was easy to print stuff on. There was no computers back then, so you couldn't just print it out and trace it. I got a book and I was copying it freehand because the book photos were too small to make a big chart to show to the class. Africa splitting in two. I kind of covered that where they're saying there's fissures, and I noticed a lot of new lakes there that were always been there, rivers that were always been there, and they are making kind of a split there. LOL, Tasmanian devil character is from the fictional land of Tasmania. No, there's really Tasmanian devils. Psychosomatic. There is Tasmanian devils. And this is an interesting one. It's kind of old, but I am not really sure if there was really Tasmanian devils way back. In fact, it was probably about 6 or 7 years ago. Ooh, they've grown a white thing. That wasn't on there before. That there was suddenly this documentary about all the Tasmanian devils were getting this communicable form of cancer, which I'd never heard of. Of course, all my attention was distracted by this communicable form of cancer. So basically, they had a cancer, and as they touched each other, they would spread the cancer. 95% of them were supposed to have the cancer. The size of a small dog, the Tasmanian devil has become the largest carnivorous marsupial in the world, following the extinction of the largest carnivorous marsupial in the world, following the extinction of the Thylacine, which seems to be coming back, but that's another story. Okay, so Tasmanian devils are real. Since the late 1990s, the devil facial tumor disease has drastically reduced the devil population and now threatens the survival of the species. 2008, it was declared endangered. Somehow, I don't think they're going to all die out. I think they're going to magically be fine, just like all the other false scares. Anyway, so yeah, they're a legit animal now. Last time I checked them, they did not have a big strip of white across their front, though. So that's interesting. Very interesting. Ooh, it looks like they have one on their butt, too. Or at least this one does. Look at that one, has it on the butt and right there. This one has it some of the, looks like he's got diapers on. They didn't have that when I saw the documentary. It's actually been quite some time since I've looked at these, but they sure as heck did not have that. So that's like a lot of these new weird bears, like the sun bears having this strip across. First the sun bears, now the little Taz. Interesting, interesting, interesting. This guy's got some really nice strips. Keep an eye on these guys. I bet they'll keep changing. So anyway, thinking back on it now, I too always assumed the Tasmanian devil was just a fake cartoon thing until I heard of these. I didn't know of the ME back then, so I didn't think about it that hard. But I'm starting to wonder if they were an early ME. Tasmanian devil. Okay, let me see now. Because when I saw the cancer, it was really hideous. They actually don't look as bad as I remember them. It's still bad, but in my when I first heard of it, it would wipe them out really quickly too. So they were really, really riddled with cancer. It looks to me like the disease is not as bad as when I first heard of it. That seems to be kind of the pattern. Sandy Island, the sandy beach of Dark City. Oh, yeah. We're going to Shell Beach. Remember the Shell Beach. Yeah, Dark City, that was, it was, looking back, it was a very interesting movie. It was the predecessor to The Matrix. Maybe in some ways more accurate. And then at the end, we get the power to remember. If you've ever watched Dark City, at the end, one person gets the power to remember all the other versions. So that's another interesting aspect to that movie. And when he gets the power to remember, then he gets the power to control the changes himself. See, in some ways, it's even more interesting to the ME than the Matrix was. It's weird because I love history and learning new things. It's like you feel alone with people around you because they don't get it. Yeah. They just they're living their same old world we used to live in, and they don't want to step out of it. The Tasmanian tiger died out. Yeah, the Tasmanian tiger, that's the thylacine. I think, right? Tasmanian tiger. The Tasmanian tiger. See, I'm really suspicious about that being on mainland Australia for me, not Tasmania. It's commonly known as the Tasmanian tiger because of its striped lower back. Tasmanian wolf because of its canid-like characteristics. It was native to Tasmania, New Guinea, and the Australian mainland. Okay, so yeah, it was named. Okay, I don't remember it being on New Guinea. Australia used to be all way out there by itself, and Tasmania used to be on the mainland, so that makes sense that it was a mainland thing. I'm still waiting for the Tasmanian tiger to show up again. Tasmanian tiger sightings are not so unusual, even though the last known thylacine died in 1936. I think we're going to see that one come back. The other thing is, I've mentioned this before, but I've noticed changes in the size of the mouth and stuff from there was very little video of it. I've watched it many times, and when it suddenly changed, the reason the tiger died, the last tiger died, changed, and the way the mouth structure has changed. So if it's bothering to change, I'm wondering if that's an indicator that it's coming back. Marsupial lions. Well, if they're extinct, I might not have known about them, but I don't recall there being marsupial lions. Every logo and spelling change stands out for the are getting really big. That's something I mention. I saw my first crow with white blotches on his stomach. Was it yesterday, I think, or the day before? I looked up big fat crow with white patches. I've never seen a crow with white patches. I mean, I know that in this timeline there are some in other places, but there was never one here with white patches on its stomach, like speckled. All right, what's the difference between a magpie and a crow? Magpie versus crow. Bum-ba-dum. The Corvidae family includes crows, jays, ravens, and magpies. Colorful plumage of jays. Your location may help you tell from crow from a magpie. Most of the Corvidae have black feathers, a mix of black, white, and maybe blue. They're definitely a lot meaner here, that's for sure. Oh, I've never seen one of these before. Crows, jays, and magpies. Look at that one. Pretty. Look at that. Pretty, pretty. We didn't have that before. Neat. There's so many neat birds now. Oh, look at each individual feather. Very pretty. Anyways, locally we did not have, I don't know if they've splotches makes it a magpie. I think it's still a crow. I don't know of any magpies. Do we have magpies in San Diego now? I don't. Magpies, San Diego. Black-throated magpie jay located in San Diego. Oh, okay. That's definitely not what we had. That's like a blue jay, but it's got more colors. Okay. Yeah. All right. So it does not look like we have crow-looking magpies anyways. Not yet. All right. Let's see what we got here. Carnivorous mushrooms. Gonna have to look that one up. From Mandela affected the second. Carnivorous mushrooms. And plants you didn't know about. I gotta click on that. Plants I didn't know about. 200 species of fungi are known to attack, kill, and digest tiny animals. Well, we've got those funky fungus that go into the insects, and take them over. That's a good point. I don't recall fungus ever being in charge of taking over any creatures before. So now they take over, like they make the zombie ants and all this different zombie insects. These meat-eating fungi and plants have evolved various forms of lures and weapons, some of which rivaling the most vicious and brutal devices seen in medieval torture chamber to attract and kill their hapless victims. Toilet plant. Okay. Last I heard, that doesn't kill anything. It just encourages bats to nest there. They poop there, and then they get their food from the bat poop. All right, and we've covered those in the past, like the last few weeks. Are specifically designed to serve as a perch for the mountain tree shrew, as it licks up copious secretions of sugary nectar. Ah, okay. The last I checked, the toilet bowl pitcher plants were for bats. The bats would nest there over the daytime and poop in there. So now they're saying this. I don't know if this is a different version of one now, but now they're saying it's a perch for tree shrews that licks up the secretions of sugary nectar. So that's a new one. In order to reach the nectar, the shrew must perch directly over the tunnel-shaped opening to the pitcher, whose rim is not slippery like those of insects devouring relatives. As it feeds, the shrew often defecates into the pitcher. The next rain will ensure that the poop is flushed into the bowl, where it will be digested and provide nitrogen. Okay, so this whole... when you think about it, so basically nature is making toilet bowls for animals now. These plants are now toilet bowls for animals. That's the second animal now. Last I checked, it was just those bats. Oyster mushrooms. Okay. So what's so vicious about oyster mushrooms? Grows on trunks of dying trees. The wood contains plenty of cellulose, but little nitrogen, so these crafty fungi exude chemical lures to attract their microscopic nematode prey. Okay, so oyster mushrooms grow on tree trunks, and they need nematodes. When the worms crawl onto the fungal hyphae, the mushroom releases toxins from the tips of tiny matchstick-like glands that paralyze the worms. The fungus then sends digestive hyphae down the victim's mouth. They penetrate through the body and slowly digest the helpless worm from the inside while it's still alive. No, oyster mushrooms did not used to do that. They just used to grow on the sides of trees. They did not torture nematodes to death. That's... All right. This is kind of a depressing one now. Come on, it keeps jumping. I might not be able to finish this one. See if I can hold it down with this. Shaggy mane. What's so gross about this one now? One of the ink cap mushrooms. I don't remember it being... Oh, man, these have changed a lot since last time looked at them. Its shaggy mane, Autodeliquesses, digests its own spore-bearing gills and cap to produce a slime, black, liquid mess with 4 to 6 hours. You have to saute these within 6 hours so it doesn't turn into a slime ball. All right, so the shaggy mane also preys on 2 species of nematodes. All right, so that's another nematode killer. So apparently now a bunch of funguses are killing nematodes. Fungus that kills with a net. Produces a complex 3-dimensional adhesive network of sticky ring-like snares that chemically bind to the surface of a nematode. So apparently a bunch of these fungus are wailing on these nematodes now. Different nematode trapping fungi respond to different sets of ascaricides according to their preferred nematode species. Kills with the lasso. A nematode at any one of these rings mechanically ruptures a line of weakness along the inner wall. The cell's internal osmotic pressure causes the water outside to rush in, making them swell, increasing the volume. The swollen ring constricts the helpless worm in a tight noose. All right, so far it's all nematodes. Bladderworts. These are all kind of old school mushrooms, too. Never heard of them eating nematodes. Although, okay, so this is a plant. Bladder trap devices. The bladder creates a partial internal vacuum by actively pumping the water inside the bladder to the outside, collapsing the sides of the bladder. The mouth-like opening is then effectively sealed by a combination of specialized flexible tissues and sticky mucilage, which keeps the water out. Near the highly sensitive trigger hairs, the mucilage is enriched with sugary carbohydrates which attract prey. When a tiny copepod, water flea, or other suitable sized prey brushes against the trigger hairs, the seal is broken, the sidewalls spring back into place, and water rushes back inside, carrying the unfortunate prey. This all happens in less than 0.001 seconds. The trap is immediately resealed, the water is quickly pumped out again, and the trap is reset. The prey is digested by enzymes. Okay, so it's basically like a Venus flytrap, but it's underwater using vacuum and mucilage and hair triggers. All right, so this is a have not heard of these either. So it's some kind of a plant that the insects walk on the hairs and then the leaf curls over and traps them. This is called butterworts. Sticky sundew plant devours insect. All right, so some kind of weird sticky insect eating pitcher plants. We've covered those before. Rats even and stuff get in there now. Carnivorous bromeliads. Ooh, I've not heard of that. Bromeliads. A lot of air plants are also bromeliads. The overlapping bases of the so-called tank bromeliads typically store pools of water that provide nurseries in which tropical tree frogs can lay their eggs. Yes. Just 3 species and 2 genera are actually carnivorous. The upright leaves of these 3 species are specialized to store permanent pools of water, and their leaves are coated with a crumbly powder that reflects UV radiation and attracts UV-sensitive beetles and other insects. The attraction is enhanced by nectar-like secretions upon which the insects feed. Insects landing on the powdery surface lose their footing and fall into the water, where they are digested by a combination of enzymes produced by the plant as well as bacteria living in the pools. Bacteria living in the pools now are helping out, huh? Interesting. So it really is like a stomach. It's got its own bacteria. Interesting. Yeah, no, I've never heard of any carnivorous bromeliads. But they're already, so we've got the poop bowl thing, and they're eating rats and stuff, these plants. Now we got the fungus eating nematodes, the fungus taking over other insects. Things are getting interesting out there. Very interesting. Ooh, suddenly I'm really sleepy too. All right, let's see. Where are we? A crow with white patches on its stomach. Yeah, it was like all speckled white and black. The armored sea robin salp. Armored sea robin salp. Probably not. Oh, cute. Ugh, except for that one. All right, it's not cute up close. Oh, look at that thing. Yeah, I never saw that before. Lobsterfish when they were exploring the underwater world. Huh. Neat. Got big fins. It looks like a big insect. Huh. Yeah, no, I haven't seen that. What is that? Oh, okay, that's a man-made object. God, can't tell anymore. All right. What about that battlefield bioluminescence that supposedly heals people? I have covered that one. That one's at least a couple months old. Yeah, that one's really weird. Now they say humans are bioluminescent but can't be seen by the human eye. I think I covered that. Humans are bioluminescent. I think I covered that one about a month ago. Biolum. And once they get that in, then they can say, oh, and a few people can actually see it, and yeah, there we go. Yeah, see, I had already clicked on that other one, so I covered that one. Humans actually glow with their own form of bioluminescence. Human bioluminescence is visible light exists. It's just too dim for our weak eyes to pick up on. Which is weird because I have also read just recently articles saying that the human eye is sensitive enough to pick up one photon. One photon. So if we can pick up one photon, then why can't we pick up bioluminescent humans? The body literally glimmers 1,000 times lower than the sensitivity of our naked eyes. And this wasn't infrared radiation caused by heat, despite how the images might appear. These signals are actually from photons of visible light particles not caused by heat. So then, of course, you're going to have to ask if everybody bioluminescence is different, if it can be used to predict disease, blah, 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 blah. Here, teams hope in the future to predict scan a person's body to check light levels indicating possible medical conditions. I want to say I'm psychic, but I probably read that last time I looked it up. See here, this is the one I must have looked up last time. Yeah, weird. So pretty soon they'll say, oh, a few humans can actually see the light if you train yourself, or blah, blah, blah. It could be easily go that way, let's just say. Looks like a shrimp mixed with a lobster. Yeah, I don't know. It looks like an insect or something. Like house centipedes, pass, earwigs, little pincher bugs. Sounds like auras. Yeah. Good point. All right. A seagull swallowing. Okay, this one's another. I've covered this before, but I found another creepy one. Seagulls have really big mouths here. They can swallow all kinds of large things. I think I had one on where it was swallowing a mouse. Here it swallows a rather large roadkill bird. So this seagull is just going to pick up this bird and stuff it down. I'm going to replay that one. Gulp. No problem. Anyway, the seagulls could not put that large material down their throat in my old timeline. All right. This one is kind of a specialty one. I don't know how much you guys remember about Sigmund Freud, but I studied him in college quite a bit. Quite a bit. And the story is really quite different now. Okay, the first issue here is apparently Freud was he came from Jewish parents. I've never heard of that. I'm looking at the photo of him. He's got a really big old schnoz now, big nose. I don't remember him being like giant hooked nose like that. He had more of a normal nose. It almost looks like a stick-on nose here. I should probably look for some more photos of him. Sigmund. See if he looks like you remember. Zoop. I just don't remember that nose being so big. Boy, he looks really pissy, this one, too. I mean, look at that. He really looks like a crab apple. Oh, I don't remember that scary look either. Interesting. I don't know. This whole story of Sigmund. All right. Here you see the famous cigar. I don't know if you studied him, but he was known, in my timeline, he was known for putting unlit cigars in his mouth and just chewing on them. And he didn't really smoke hardly at all. He just would have this unlit cigar. And hence the famous saying, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Because if you know anything about his theories, sticking stuff in your mouth and was like signs of certain things. And so him sticking an unlit cigar in his mouth all the time would be classically predicted to be a sign of certain things according to his own theories. But of course, when it came to him, suddenly, a cigar is just a cigar. It doesn't always mean that there's these issues. So it was always kind of just laughable because he would have this unlit cigar and then he would say it doesn't mean anything. Well, I guess in this time he lit all those cigars and many, many more. And I could not find any information about this unlit cigar thing. And this was a thing for a long, long time, this unlit cigar thing. But in this timeline, he lit them all, apparently, is one thing. All right, we'll get back to that. The other thing is his parents were Jewish. He was offered safe passage to the United States, but he stayed in Austria. He didn't leave, even though he could have. I don't remember him having any problems with the Nazis. I remember them pretty much leaving him alone because he wasn't Jewish. I mean, they're not saying he was actually, his parents were Jewish and they were saying he got closer to his Jewish faith as he got older. But he didn't have a problem with the Nazis in my timeline because he wasn't Jewish and his parents weren't Jewish. Freud was no longer safe in Vienna after the Nazi occupation. He was as safe as anybody, which wasn't super safe, but he was not from Jewish parents. And in here, they were targeting psychoanalysts in particular. I don't remember anything about that. Their fixation on the id's uncivilized impulses seemed to the Nazis to undermine the dignity of the Volk. Never heard of anything like that. So that's all new. Another thing I heard recently was that the Nazis were really targeting their anti-Semitism and hatred of the Polish. They keep saying it in the same sentence, hatred of Jewish and Polish. In my time, it was Jewish. The Poles were just a hassle because they wouldn't roll over and worship Nazis as much as Nazi Germany wanted. But they didn't go after the Poles originally. They were just sort of in the way of global domination. So, but in this timeline, apparently, from the early on, the Nazis were targeting the Jewish and the Polish. And that's the first I've ever heard of that. Was like yesterday in a documentary. Princess Marie Bonaparte, Napoleon's granddaughter, got him to uproot for London. I really don't. I can't remember if he went to London or not, but I don't remember him having any problem with the Nazis. Also, apparently, a bunch of his sisters. Let's see, was it how many sisters? 4 sisters died in concentration camps in this timeline. 4 of his sisters. That didn't happen for me. All right, there's another article that covers more weird stuff. Oh, Nazis also seized all of his assets, and he was exiled out of Germany. I don't remember any of that happening. All right, here's another article on him. Things you may not know about Sigmund Freud. These articles are everywhere, and the minute I see one, I read it because it's just like basically it's an ME alert when you see these things you may not know, things you don't know, things you probably don't know, things you never knew. Just read them because they're just full of MEs. Okay, I'm really suspicious about this one, but it may not have been something that they really talked about. Freud's death may have been physician-assisted suicide. I noticed euthanasia is pretty popular in the current timeline. They were totally against it, and then suddenly, within the course of several years, became legal in California and made my head spin, similar to how fast marijuana is getting popular. The whole thing about him being a fan of cocaine, I just heard about that one about 5 years ago. I'm not sure if that was in here, but we never learned anything about him being a fan of cocaine in my old timeline. All right, he was a chain smoker in this timeline. In my timeline, he would just have the cigars in his mouth a lot, but he didn't smoke them very much. Apparently, he had 30 cancer surgeries in this time, 30. Became addicted to tobacco after lighting up his first cigarettes in his 20s. He often smoked more than 20 of them a day, cigars. So that's a lot of cigars. Because cigars are like a lot more than just like, they're so much stronger than just a cigarette. So that would just be like smoking 100 cigarettes or something. Freud believed the habit enhances productivity and creativity. They found a cancerous tumor inside his mouth in 1923. Doctors removed a large part of his jaw. Although he underwent 33 additional surgeries over the next 16 years and had large prosthesis inserted to separate his sinus and jaw, Freud never quit smoking. Nope. None of that happened in my timeline. He didn't even smoke that much. Freud thought cocaine was a miracle drug. Yes, that was in here. Okay, that's a little bit older one. Distributed doses to his friends and wife. Magical substance. With the news of other addictions and overdose deaths spreading, Freud stopped advocating cocaine's medical benefits but continued to use the drug intermittently for migraines, nasal inflammation, and depression until the mid-1890s. The Nazis burned his books and drove him from Austria. Yeah, no. Okay, Freud studied the sex life. No, okay, I don't know about that one. Okay, so the rest of them I really don't know about, but that history stuff, no. No, it's just wrong. This is somebody I really studied, and that none of that stuff was in there. Hitler had brown eyes and wanted blue for everyone else. Yes, that made him such a hypocrite. This timeline he wasn't. We covered last week he loved animals in this timeline. Now, watching the war documentaries, I swear like half the stuff in the war documentaries now I've never even heard of. Famous this and that place, I've never heard that word before. I used to watch these all the time. Saw light blue moss a few days ago. Cool. All right, I'm going to have to jump ahead. They're just too far back. Suddenly I'm like super sleepy. Who would have thought that the History Channel would be telling new stories? Yeah, and they're like old documentaries too. They're like from that time when I would always watch documentaries, except for I never saw any of them before. Just like all these the beach. There's some place called Utah that they were fighting. Utah. It wasn't our Utah like the United States. It was just weird. Never even heard that word before in association with any fighting there. All right, so blah blah blah. So all that Floyd. Okay, I'm coming down the home stretch now. Okay, got that one. All right, this one is from user Kitomi, KT. It might be OME or it might be 0ME from Redcond. This is just more of a fluffy one here. Zatarans. Zatarans. Do you remember Zatarans? Zatarans. Zatarans mustard. That's what I remember as Zatarans. But in this timeline, it's Zatarains. I'm sure that it's Zatarans before I'm sure of the spelling. But here it has always been Zatarains. Apparently still pronounced Zatarans, but Zatarains. Not for me. It was I don't know. It's like it's like those Berenstain Bears. It's Zatarains now. So no, there's no I in there. It's Zatarans. So I agree with them. That was like about a 50-50 split. A lot of people did remember Zatarains. All right, last one. Another medical one. Let's see how you spell that. All right, this one's got another interesting history for me. Okay, so, and this probably was a ways back. I'm always watching these medical documentaries and stuff, and it was probably maybe like eight years ago. There was one on where this woman was sick all the time. She couldn't figure out what's wrong with her. The doctor said, took tests and said she was fine. She always felt exhausted. And then she was found finally that she had a little tiny leak where the cerebral spinal fluid was leaking out of her brain and causing a runny nose. Okay, and it was a super weird freak thing. There was no name for it because they'd never even heard of it. It was like only a few people in the world had ever had it. They did surgery to close it, and it kept popping open several times, and finally it stayed shut, and then she was fine. That's the first I've ever heard of it. Well, apparently now it's more of a thing, and they have a name for it. It's called CSF rhinorrhea. Rhinorrhea is basically runny nose. So if you have cerebral spinal fluid rhinorrhea, then you have cerebral spinal fluid leaking out your nose. The protective fluid that surrounds the brain finds its way into the nose, and sinuses often appear as very watery, runny nose. They didn't have a name for it back then. Most cases occur after major accidents where the bones of the face and skull experience trauma. The majority of these leaks stop on their own, but surgery may be needed if the leaking continues after 48 to 72 hours. Okay, that's all new. I've not heard of any of that before. It certainly wasn't in the research I did in the past. Some patients can develop spontaneous rhinorrhea, CSF rhinorrhea. This may be because of idiopathic intracranial hypertension. And idiopathic just means we don't know why, intracranial hypertension. So pressure in the brain, basically. Also known as pseudotumor cerebri, where high pressure inside the skull eventually creates small holes between the nose and the area where the brain rests. I have never heard of leakage occurring in that way due to holes in the nose, due to increased pressure. Before your brain would just get really big. I mean, why do these babies have these giant balloon brains then if that cerebral spinal fluid could just leak out the nose? Cause of spontaneous CFS rhinorrhea is unknown, but the condition is associated with obesity and high blood pressure. Risks include the possibility of developing meningitis. I guess if there's a hole going up into your brain, you can get like germs up in there. Antibiotics have been shown to reduce the risk and aren't recommended on a regular basis unless signs of meningitis appear. Symptoms. Patients may note a continual salty taste and sense of drainage. Bending over, increased activity make the symptoms worse. Changes in vision, headaches, ringing in the ears, and dizziness. There are other causes for these problems, but blah, 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 blah. Testing the drainage from the nose. It's how you discover it. Anyways, so it's a whole thing now. I guess that's my point. It's creepy. This woman who had it, she was really sick. They're not really talking about you having to be really sick to have it in what I'm reading now. So, I don't know. We're just more hardy. The brain can leak more. I don't know what to say. I'm just weird. I heard about that leakage about 5 years ago, but it was said to be extremely rare. Yeah, there was no name for it. Once they come up with a name, I think it's on the in because when they first show up, they don't have any name, and then they get more common, they have a name. Do you remember left kidney being higher than right one? We're straight across. Yes, I agree with you, straight across. That's something I've mentioned casually a few times. They were straight across. The two sides of the lungs were also the same. The heart was puny. It fit back in there without messing with the heart. I mean, with the lungs. It's really big now. The lungs are all weird. There was something else that's not balanced anymore. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was the lungs. Coyote out there bark and they go, whoa, 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 whoa. All right, well, anyways, 1:30, so it's been an hour, 40 minutes. Remember, dolphins having diving reflex, but now supposedly humans do too. I remember babies having if they went under the water, they would close their mouth and hold their breath. That's the diving reflex I recall. All right, let's see. Let me see what all the reflex is now. It optimizes respiration by preferentially distributing oxygen stores to the heart and brain, enabling submersion for an extended time. Okay. Okay. That's not diving reflex I remember. It was just that you wouldn't, like babies, even though they're like stupid babies that don't know anything, theoretically, I guess. I don't think they really are that, but not on a spiritual level. But on a physical level, they're pretty useless. But yet, even they know that when you dunk them, they shut their mouth and not breathe. That was the diving reflex. Shut it and don't breathe. You don't have to tell a baby not to suck up a bunch of water. It knows. It's an instinct, a reflex. That was diving reflex. But apparently now there's this whole optimization of preferentially distributing oxygen source to the heart and brain, enabling submersion for an extended time. No, I don't remember anything. Reflect exhibited strongly in aquatic animals. Lesser response in humans, in animals, including adult humans. Babies up to 6 months old, and diving birds, such as ducks and penguins. So, what's the heck? It's in babies up to 6 months, and then no, and then back in adult humans. That's just weird. Triggered by chilling and wetting the nostrils and face while breath holding. Oh, that's not the diving reflex I remember. So aquatic animals have evolved profound physiological adaptations to conserve oxygen. The apnea and its duration, bradycardia, vasoconstriction, all that occur in terrestrial animals as a neural response, but the effects are more profound in natural divers. Okay, well, yeah, that's all new. I cry uncle on that. Oh, no. Ah, God, sleepy all of a sudden. It was weird. It just hit me suddenly. I was fine for like half the stream. Moonlit Illusions talking about some changes where she's just easier to shut off the monkey mind of the human, the chatter. I am a lot quieter. I mean, you wouldn't really think of it when I'm on here yapping away at the live stream, but I used to talk all the time, and now I'm actually pretty quiet a lot of the time. There's definitely some changes that kind of match what she's been talking about. Um, I think it might just be part of the evolution. If you watch, like, if you listen to some of that Eckhart Tolle stuff, it kind of sounds like some of his stuff. You might want to check into that if you haven't listened to any of his stuff. There's a bunch of free stuff on YouTube, just about quieting the mind and being more happy and stuff. I think it does work, definitely. Sneezing through the mouth is still a weird experience every time. Yes, I that one flew under the radar for me, but I don't know who came up with that one, who noticed that one, but that was a very good find. Yes, and I had noticed that the cranial, I mean the nasal areas are much larger. That's one thing I did notice. I also noticed now that if I get sick, these areas don't stuff up right away. In fact, no matter how sick I've gotten in recent years, I have not had a full clog. It would be a little clog on one side only, and I used to get clogged pretty fast. So there's definitely different. That's one thing I like is not. I hate having a clogged nose, and I haven't had a full clogged nose in a number of years. Knock on wood. Anyway, so yeah, I think it's about time for me to hit the road here. Oh, thank you. $2. Woohoo! Awesome, I'm awake. Did you just get here? Because I'm checking out, so I apologize if you just got here. Anyways, it's time for me to go to bed. Look, my stream status is bad. I've seen people sneeze through the nose when I was little, and snot would fly everywhere. I made it a habit to sneeze through the mouth. I don't really remember having a choice. It would come out both areas in the old days. Now after somebody mentioned that, I paid attention when I was sneezing, and there definitely nothing tries to come out. Nothing tries to come out the nose. If you try to like clog it, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't. All right. Anyways, I think it's time for me to hit it. I'm kind of extra spaced out today, so I apologize. Anyways, thanks everybody for coming. As usual, I greatly appreciate it. I mean, there'd be no point in me chatting away if you guys weren't here. So thank you so much. This is Eva signing off for Once Upon a Timeline.